Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today, we are going to be installing one of our new kits here, and that is the Chevy 1500 07 to 14, both Chevy and GMC rear bump stop replacement. Now this will apply to the regular cabs and the short beds. Will not necessarily apply to the long beds. The long beds have a little bit taller frame over the rear axle, so they actually got a shorter bump stop. I mean, you could potentially use this for that. Your bump stop would just be like inch and a half lower. So anyway, let's take a look at what we've got and what happens to these trucks. All right, so here's the rear bump stop that actually will be replacing today on the video. These pretty much what we find a lot of times is that if you were to go and like need to replace this, and sometimes these bump stops will just fall out, you can't really take those out, because you can see there, that's the condition. This is the other side. You can go try to unbolt that, but it's just not going to happen. The other thing we run into is that whenever customers bring us trucks, and a lot of times we will talk to them about doing basically a full needle scaling and then a rust converter and rust encapsulator after we do the repairs. A lot of times in the needle scaling, this is one item that looks solid but isn't solid. So on these, on the inside there should be a hole, and like this is the other side. The inside there should be a hole, but this outside, there's actually not supposed to be any hole there. Not supposed to be any holes other than this drain hole down here on the front or back. And a lot of times you can see that one there is starting to get a hole in it. And you can just see how on the inside of this one, like how that massive chunk of rust there we just didn't bust loose is in there. And a lot of times they're just filled up with crap. So anyway, they rust out, so we're here. We've actually already replaced the other side, so we'll go ahead and replace this side. Now to start, we obviously have to go and, well, we've obviously got the bed removed. You're gonna have a hard time doing this if you don't remove the bed. I don't know, you might be able to actually do it if you don't remove the bed. I don't know if I'd recommend it though, it'd be a real pain. Chances are you're gonna be replacing other stuff anyway. So we've got the bed removed, fuel tank removed, all that good stuff. We've actually covered the cab with a weld blanket. We do recommend that because when you go and you cut these two welds on the outside and on the inside, you know, there's a chance you're going to throw sparks up onto the cab, and that safety glass in the cab and sparks don't really mix. You don't want to get those things melted into your glass, because that can't happen. Anyway, so for removing this, like I said, weld on the outside, weld on the inside. These are actually also welded on the bottom. So what we'll do is we'll take a hard wheel and we'll try to follow the frame down and kind of cut this off. Now, you do want to be a little bit careful. You don't want to try to cut into the frame as much as possible. On this outside, it's not such a big deal because our kit will actually cover that, and we'll go up higher than that partially for that reason. But especially on the on the outside. On the inside too, also not as big a deal because our kit's going to come with a plate that actually will cover the inside and the bottom, because a lot of times if you were to just cut this off like this and go to weld onto it, it is pretty difficult, especially if you're putting it right back in the same spot. A lot of times there's damage, not going to weld well. We found it's easier just to go ahead, add an angle shaped piece, and you'll see that when we take a look at the kit here in just a second. So we'll cut this weld on the outside, cut the weld on the inside. These welds down here, what we'll do is we'll actually just take the hard wheel and we just cut in here. We don't try to get in here from the side. It's a little bit difficult, especially back here, because the frame back here starts to angle down. A little bit harder to do. We like to really just get this off, and then we'll clean those up with the hard wheel once we get done. But anyway, let us get started. We'll get that cut off, and then we'll take a look at the kit. All right, we've got everything prepped. We cut it off. We cleaned up where the welds were with a grinder. If you noticed on the video, on the inside, a lot of times this inside can be pretty thin. We actually cut through the frame on the inside. Not a huge deal because of this piece, but oftentimes the inside, the bottom, they can be a little bit troublesome, which is why we actually include this piece. So this kit is fairly simple. It's only 3 pieces. This piece here is basically a frame piece. So this will go on the inside and the bottom. Is typically those are the areas that will be an issue. A lot of times this top and outside are pretty solid, but if you do have a problem with the outside, let us know. We can also make one of those pieces. They just aren't included in this kit. So what we'll do here is we'll kind of just assemble this upside down. So imagine this is the inside. This is actually the piece, of course, that's gonna replace the raised, I guess, whatever you want to call it, bump stop portion. And this is gusset that will actually, when we're done, basically go on the outside of the frame like that. Here, one thing, and I should have mentioned this right at the beginning, if you're not comfortable with centering this by eye, and it's not too hard, I mean, you can look straight down on the axle. You can mark on the top here where the center of that bump stop is before you cut it off. But generally it's a bump stop. You've got a pretty big area to play with. So now the first thing we're going to do is we're going to install the frame plate. So what we've done here is we have used a Weld Thru primer. We recommend using a Weld Thru primer on both the back side of this plate and the back side of the frame after we've cleaned it up a little bit here. And for us, we've already needle scaled it and cleaned it, so we're going to go ahead and prime it. And we will put a link to the primer that we recommend in the description. We'll also put a link up top right now, so if you need to buy some of that primer, go and check it out. We've gone through a lot of different Weld Thru primers, and this is the one that, even though it is a little pricey, we found that it is the best for us to use. Now we'll put the inside and bottom plate here on the frame. You can see, of course, there's a slot in the back, so we're going to come back pretty close to that slot. You leave a little bit of space around the slot. The farther you go back, the frame starts to angle back out, so you'll have to manipulate this area back here to get it closed up, especially this corner down here, and there'll be a slot in there for you to close that up. Then we're going to mark out the edges, top, sides, bottom, and the outside. And now we're going to go and we're going to take a small grinder. We're basically going to clean up all those edges so we can make sure we can get a good weld on that plate. now we can start installing this inner frame piece. First we'll get it roughly lined up, and then we're going to use some large C-clamps. It can be a little painful. Now, one thing to watch for that we've noticed, and we're going to start by putting our clamps actually top to bottom, but we're going to do it on the inside a little bit, because we have noticed that sometimes this plate can end up cockeyed where it wants to angle the bracket that you're going to add out. I don't know if it's just because the way the frames are or what, but just noticed it. I'll put a couple of C-clamps on here. I wish we would have set them up correctly first. Now we aren't gonna now before we go and do any tacking, we do need to check and make sure. So I think here in the back we need to pull it over farther. All right, now that we've got it pretty well located up against the bottom of the frame, up against the inside of the frame, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start tacking some of the places where it's up tight close to the frame. Now back here there's going to be a large gap. You're going to end up having to close that up a little bit later, so we can avoid that for now. But we're going to go in, we're going to get some tacks in there first, then we will move the C-clamp. So we'll basically just use one C-clamp to kind of go around, close up any gaps, tack it all together, and then we'll take a look at it before we weld it up real quick. Now we've got this all tacked up. We've closed up all of the gaps here on the bottom, dropping the plates. On this outside here, it's a little bit more difficult. You do close up the gap, it's gonna look like you have a large gap there, but on the bottom it's actually up against it. It's because this is round and this is flat. Honestly, we'll probably on the future cut this back a little bit more, I noticed. Now what you're going to need to do, go in, solid weld everything here. Be careful, the inside and the bottom can be pretty thin when you go to weld those. The rear corner and the front corner here at the bottom, we're going to need to hammer closed. You're going to have a little cut there for you to hammer close and weld shut. Out here we'll weld, and then we'll probably go in and grind. We're going to want this to be flush because that gusset plate we have actually will go up the outside of this frame here just to tie it up into the frame some more. So we're gonna go ahead, we'll get this welded, and then we'll be back and talk about the bracket for the bottom. Now for the other two pieces to this kit, the outside piece and the bracket, we'll usually go ahead and weld these up on a table because it's a little bit easier. The bracket will fit on the outside, or this gusset will fit on the outside of that bracket. Just a second, I'll tack it up. So fit just like that on the outside, because whenever you go to put this on the frame, that's going to basically be what you use to set the distance in from the outside of the frame. So now we're going to go ahead, we're going to weld this solid on the inside and on the outside. All right, final step here. What we've gone and done is we've taken our bracket, we've gone ahead and marked where the center of the hole is, and then we've kind of marked out where we want it to be. Kind of looking, making sure that it's lined up. Once we're happy with that, make sure it's got this flush down here on the bottom. You don't want it to be angled out, especially if you do have any welds that are sticking up there in the way. Grind any of that down. Get it lined up. Go ahead Now sometimes with it flat up against there, like I said, it seems like these frames are not quite square or flat on the bottom. We'll often end up with a larger gap out here on the outside than we will on the inside. Not a huge deal for us. We'll go in, weld up this hole outside, weld here. We will actually then also go in and we weld this joint on the inside. And all of that's really for us just to keep stuff from getting wedged up in there, causing it to, you know, essentially rust out faster. So now basically we'll just get this solid welded. Now, final look at the kit here, all welded up. So basically now all that's left is to go and get some new bump stops. And if you're looking for new bump stops, we'll put a link in the description of this video for the bump stops for the 97 to 2014s, at least the ones that would typically purchase off of Amazon. Now, we will say with those, we typically don't use the bolt that comes with them. We usually put our own bolts in them because it's kind of like a weird bolt that comes with it, but they are reasonably priced anyway. Thank you for watching. If you're looking for this kit, you can find it on taboocustoms.com, and if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them here on the video or contact us on the website. Thank you for watching, and as always, a like or subscribe is greatly appreciated.